Yeah, hi guys, good morning. Okay, this will be session 5 on Terraform, right? Okay, in today's session, we'll see S3 state file, S3 as a backend. Okay, and how can we lock the state file by using DynamoDB? Okay, and what are provisioners, what is taint, untaint in Terraform? Okay, so let me share my screen first. Hope you can see my screen.
Yes, bro.
Yes.
Okay, let me first delete all these files. Okay. Mm, okay, so we have Terraform remote state and state locking. So basically, we are aware of the state files, right? So what does the state file contains? State file contains the blueprint or the real infrastructure. I mean the actual infrastructure which has been created with the help of Terraform. Okay, so the reason, we have one concept called remote state in Terraform and state locking. Remote state means, For example, let me create one basic template. Okay, so this is our basic template, right? So let me use Terraform init. Okay, and if I'm trying to apply Terraform apply, okay, so yes, what will happen? This resource will get created. Apart from this resource, we are also able to see one file called terraform.tf state. Okay, this file actually has the complete data of our real infrastructure which has been provisioned with the help of Terraform. Okay, so now, for example, this is our configuration file and this is my state file. Okay, and we have multiple members in our team who are working on the Terraform. Okay, so in that case, that will be very difficult in order to share the state files and main.tf. Basically, with the help of state file only, we can understand what's the actual infrastructure and what Terraform needs to be what activity needs to perform by the Terraform, right? So if you have multiple people, then it will be very difficult because this state file is actually stored in my local machine. This is in my local machine. Again, I need to do some SCP or copy. I need to use some SCP commands, or I need to upload this to any of the drives or file sharing systems. Okay, so that they can download and they can start working on it. So apart from this, okay, this will be very difficult if we have multiple people who are working in our team. So in order to avoid such cases, what we can do, we can store our main.tf and terraform.tf state file in our central repository, that is GitHub. Okay, but again the problem is, for example, if I have stored this in the central repository, okay, so myself and another team member are trying to execute the state file at the same point of time. This main.tf he has downloaded. Okay, we have did git clone, we have downloaded in our local machine, and both are trying to execute the main.tf at the same point of time. At that point of time, what will happen? Terraform will throw some unwanted results or unwanted uh, issues. Basically, there might be a discrepancy. Means we can see unwanted or unexpected behavior from Terraform if multiple users are trying to execute the stateful at the same point of time. Okay. In order to avoid that, what we can do, we can create a locking system for our stateful. Means if multiple users are trying to access our main.tf file, then for example, I have executed Terraform apply, then it will be locking the state file until my activity has been completed successfully, and then it will release the log, and then the second person can able to execute Terraform apply, or else it will be on hold itself. Okay, so apart from this, terraform.tf state each and every time we need to upload this to GitHub. For example, I have added some more providers. Okay, instead of only one provider, I am adding multiple providers. Then again, what I need to do, I need to upload my Terraform main.tf and state file to the central repository each and every time. Pratisari I am executing and I need to push it to the central repository. Okay, in order to avoid such kind of cases, we have remote backends. In Terraform, we have remote backends as S3, Terraform storage, HashiCorp console to store the state files. So in our case, we will be using S3 as our remote backend. So what will happen whenever we make any modifications, whenever we execute Terraform apply, then the state file will be automatically pushed to central repository, that is S3. Okay. So, and another user who is trying to access our main.tf, no need to download it each and every time. So if I'm executing main.tf, what it will do, it will connect to the S3, it will check for the latest state file, and it will help me to execute my main.tf file based upon the state file. Okay, no need to manually upload. Each and every time it will automatically get uploaded to our central repository. Okay, so and state locking is used to lock the state file so that no two users can execute the state file at the same point of time. Okay, so as I said, for remote backend we will be using S3, and for state locking we will be using DynamoDB. Okay, so we'll be using S3 for our remote backend and DynamoDB for our state locking. So let me use this example, or let me delete this. Okay, let me use the same example. Okay, as of now, let me undo the changes by using Terraform destroy. Okay, ఇంకొకటి ఏంటంటే each and every time we are executing yes manually, right? So if you want to auto approve, then you can use this command flag auto approve. So this will provide yes by default. Spelling app rov auto approve. Okay, automatically without any manual intervention, this has been deleted. Okay, so manual interaction is a good practice. ఎందుకంటే whatever changes we are going to do, we need to check. Okay, so auto approve flag is not recommended, but as of now, since this will not impact anything, I'm using that. Okay, so now we have deleted everything, so we don't have the state file, log file, everything. Okay, let me delete this. Let me save and close. Let me open again because I have exported some variables. So let me open this again in Visual Studio. Okay, so we have our resource file. Now what I will do, I will create one S3. Okay, let me delete this. I will create one S3 bucket. I have already written that script. Okay, so let me copy this. So here the resource name is AWS underscore S3 underscore bucket, and the name will be S3 underscore bucket. Okay, and the bucket name will be S3 backend, and this is our access control list. Okay, these are the recommended attributes. Okay, so once this is done, let me use Terraform init. Okay, initialization has been successfully completed. Now let me use Terraform apply. Yes. Okay, one resource has been added. If I'll go to my AWS account, okay, and if I'll go to my S3, here we can see one bucket has been created, that is on March 14th, I mean today, and this is the UTC timeout. Okay, So 1116 is our IST. Okay. So S3 backend is our bucket name. Okay. So once this is done, now let me create our DynamoDB. Okay, for state locking. So in order to create DynamoDB, we have this script. So let me copy this resource. Okay, if I'll explain this or if I'll show you this. Okay, so this is our resource name. I mean the block type, and this is our resource name. Okay, and this will be the Terraform logical name. Okay, this will be the name of our table what we are trying to create. Okay, hash key means unique key. In unique key we are trying to capture one ID called lock ID. Okay, and then we have the reading and writing capacity, that is 2020. Basically there's the input and output of the database. Okay, and the attributes what we need to pass is name. Okay, that is lock ID. Okay, and type s means string. Okay, so lock ID ante basically the commit ID whenever we are trying to execute our Terraform, right? So here if I show you this, it is trying to create one commit ID. In Terraform state file. Okay, this will be our ID, commit ID. Okay, so in lock ID that will get stored. Okay, so I have created my table DynamoDB, and let me execute Terraform init, and then Terraform apply. What will happen? This will create DynamoDB table. Okay, okay, once this is done, let us check if DynamoDB has been created. Okay, if I'll go to tables, here I can find one table called Terraform-state-locked-dynamo. Okay, so this table we have created with the help of our Terraform script. Okay, if I'll explore this, as of now, do we see anything? No. This is an empty table which has been created. Okay, so once that is done, then in order to configure the backend, we need to use this block. Terraform block needs to be used. Okay, let me copy. Let me paste here. Okay, the block will start with Terraform, and the backend, remote backend will be S3. If it is Terraform storage, then we need to configure the Terraform storage name. Okay, and the bucket name will be S3 backend, similar to what we have created. Okay, this is our bucket name, right? So here we want to store all our state files. Okay, and the DynamoDB table, this is our table name what I have created just now. Okay, and the key means terraform.tf state file. Basically terraform.tf state file needs to be pushed to the remote servers. Okay, and the region where we have created, that is US East 1. Okay, so once this is created, now let me execute terraform init. Okay, if you'll see the state file here, we can find some content in the state file, right? We are able to see the blueprint of our existing infrastructure. Now if I, after adding the Terraform backend, if I execute Terraform apply, what happened? Okay, now let me execute Terraform init. What it is doing, it is trying to download the provider related to the backend or the plugins. Say, if you'll see the output here, it is trying to configure the state locks. Okay. Once that is done, even I haven't applied Terraform apply because this was our latest file. I mean, no changes has been made in our configuration, right? So if I'll open Terraform TF state file, are we able to see anything? This is an empty file. Where is our state file now stored? If I'll go to my S3, if I'll open this, here I can see the state file which has been pushed by Terraform automatically without any manual intervention. Okay, if I'll go to my DynamoDB and if I'll refresh this, here I can find one table created with our lock ID. This is our lock ID. Okay, if suppose I'm trying to add some more thing to this file, okay, for example, let me delete this state file because as of now this is empty and it is also not required for us anymore. Okay, so now let me add one resource. Resource will be local file. I will use a local file resource only. .txt and the content and the cats. Okay, so if I'm trying to use Terraform apply, acquiring state log, basically it has been logged. Okay, once my activity has been completed, then only this will release the log and the other user can execute. Terraform init. Okay, now if I'm trying to execute Terraform apply, we can see the page.txt file will be get created. Okay, it is acquiring the log so that no other user can execute now. Once my activity is completed, then the other user can perform his activity. Okay, here we can see pets.txt, but there is no state file downloaded because this state file has been pushed to our S3 bucket. If you want to have multiple state files, then we can enable the versioning in our bucket. Gurtundi kada versioning concept? Yes or no?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so this is how it will work. So basically this is our Terraform. This will get synchronized with our S3 state bucket. Okay, so once we execute any command, it will sync with the S3 state bucket, and this will also log the DynamoDB so that we have very secure state file as well as no other users can execute at the same point of time. This is how this will be working, and this is very important as part of interviews because in real environment this is how we will be storing our state files. Endukante state files locally unte that will be a problem to distribute across team members. For example, in my team, if suppose now I can store this main.tf in my central repository. Okay, so anyone from my team can download this and he can add any changes and he can execute, and this will get synced with my S3 bucket. Okay, this will get synced with my S3 bucket, and this will check if the state, I mean, if the changes are available or not. Based upon the state file, the changes will be implemented on the infrastructure. Once done, then then again what he will do, he will upload this main.tf to the central repository. That's how they will be maintaining the Terraform templates. Okay, hope this was clear. Even as part of interviews, this will be asked what was the most interesting thing or challenging thing what you have did, I mean why you have used Terraform. In that case we can say that we have used Terraform to provision our AWS infrastructure, where we have created VPC, subnet, security groups, application load balancer, route 53, as well as our what we have used CloudWatch dashboards and everything. Okay, apart from that, we have used S3 as our backend as well as DynamoDB locking, so that our state files will be pushed to S3 buckets. Okay, and we have the locking enabled with the help of DynamoDB table so that no multiple users can use our configurations. I mean, no multiple users can execute at the same point of time. So this is what we need to tell the interviewer if anyone asks you about the Terraform. Okay, guys, let me know if you have any questions, or else I will move to next topic. Okay. And then we have Terraform provisioners. So if you'll remember, we have Terraform providers, that's different concept, and provisioners. Okay, provisioners is also a different concept in Terraform. Most of the times we will not be using provisioners because this is not really required for us. Okay, but as part of concept, I mean, as part of interview, we should know what is Terraform provisioner. Basically, Terraform provisioners are used to execute the command on the remote machines on the or the local machines. For example, if I'm trying to create one Terraform, I mean, if I'm trying to create one AWS instance with the help of Terraform, so my requirement is, once the instance is launched, I need to install Nginx or Apache in my EC2 instance. In that case, we can use Terraform provisioner, which will help us to execute some commands or scripts on the remote machines or on the local machines. Okay, so if you want to execute any commands on the EC2 instance, we have one more idea. I mean, we can also use the user data block. If you remember, when we are trying to launch our instance, for example, let me show you the manual process. Okay, for example, EC2. If I'm trying to launch one EC2 instance, in advanced detail, we have something called user data. User data enduku. Why do we use user data? To give the additional data. To install or execute any commands, not to give the additional data. User data is used to run any commands when provisioning the EC2 instance. Okay, so we can also use the user data block while creating our EC2 instance without using provisioners. Provisioners kuda em chestundi? This is trying to execute the commands on the remote machines or on the local machines. Okay, so we have two type of provisioners. Basically, where do we write the provisioners? Provisioners will be written inside the resource block. Ante ఈ particular blocks locally will be writing. For example, let me do one thing. Let me delete this, or else let me use destroy command. Let me destroy the existing infrastructure first. It is deleting everything, our S3 bucket, our DynamoDB, and all the stuff. Okay, so this is done. Now let me remove this. Let me use the resource block AWS underscore instance, and then instance ID, that is, for example, web server. Okay, this will be my name. Okay, and then AMI ID. Let me pick up one AMI ID. Okay, let me copy this. I want to provision one Amazon Linux. Okay, and then what we have, AMI ID. Apart from AMI ID, what the attributes I can use? Type, instance type, right? Instance type, for example, let me use t2.micro. Okay, and then key name, I will use Linux-01. This is my key available, already existent in my AWS account. So here is my key, that is Linux-01. So I will be using same key. Okay, and then do we have anything? Okay, let me add the tags. name equal to first hyphen server. Okay, so this is one of the basic script to provision one EC2. So let me use Terraform init so that the plugin will be downloaded. Acha, tags for each వచ్చింది. Okay, let me remove this. Okay, so Terraform init. What happened? Basically, since I was using the backend and all, it was throwing some errors. Okay, now hope this will be okay. Wish to automatic migrate state. A change in the backend has been detected, which may require migrating existing state. Okay, let me use this command. Terraform init -migrate -state. Because previously I have configured my SC as a backend, right? So I just wanted to remove that. Let me do one thing. Let me remove these configurations again. This is getting messed here. Terraform init. Okay. Now we don't have any backup files or .terraform. That's the reason this will be working fine now. Okay. Now if I'll execute Terraform apply, what this will do, this should provision one EC2 instance with a name called first-server. VPC ID, subnet ID, this will pick the default one. As of now, I'm not passing any of the VPC IDs, right? That's the reason this will pick up the default VPC. If default is not available, then this will throw error. In my case, default VPC is available. That's the reason this is working. Okay, so in the meantime, let me go to my EC2. Tags haven't worked. This got failed. Basically, maybe because of this. Let me use Terraform plan to check. Tag రాలేదు అక్కడ అందుకోసమే ఐఎమ్ ట్రైంగ్ టు చెక్ దట్ అగైన్.
క్లోజ్ చేయాలి.
వాట్
మనం ఇన్స్టెన్స్ సరే లాంచ్ చేసాం కదా ట్యాగ్స్ ఇచ్చి. ఇప్పుడు మళ్ళీ మనం ట్యాగ్స్ రాలేదని మళ్ళీ అప్లై చేస్తే ఆ ఇన్స్టెన్స్ డిస్ట్రాయ్ అయిపోయి ఇది క్రియేట్ అవుతుందా?
అవును, కొత్త ఇన్స్టెన్స్ వస్తుంది. అందుకోసమే మనం ఏం చేయాలి?
ప్రివెంటర్స్
బేసికల్లీ ఈ కేసులో ఏమైందంటే ఇది జస్ట్ మోడిఫై చేస్తుంది. ఓకే, సో దిస్ ఇస్ జస్ట్ యాడింగ్. ఎందుకంటే ద ఏఎంఐ ఐడీస్ అండ్ అపార్ట్ ఫ్రమ్ దట్ ఎవ్రీథింగ్ ఆర్ సేమ్. సో ఇంకోటి, if you open the Terraform state file, here you can see the details. For example, it will check the IPs as well. Okay, public ARN number, public IP, instance ID. That's the reason it is not deleting, because Terraform has understood that okay, this is the same instance, you just want to modify the tag. If avi lekunnapudu, then this will not work. Okay, so okay, so we have our instance, okay, which is been provisioned with the help of Terraform. Now what we need to do is, for example, if I want to install anything, so as I said, if I want to install Nginx or any other server, right, I mean Apache or Tomcat or whatever commands, if I want to run, Okay, I can use either provisioners. So in provisioners, again, we have two type of provisioners. One is remote provisioner and one is local provisioner. Okay, so remote provisioner is used if I want to execute commands at the runtime on remote machines. For example, this EC2 is our remote machine. If I want to execute any commands on remote server, then I can use the provisioner called remote provisioner. If suppose I want to execute the commands on the local machine, in this case I can use the provisional called local provisioner. So we have two different provisions. Local provisioner means where we have installed our Terraform. In my case, I have installed my Terraform over here, right? So in this case, this is my local provisioner. I can execute my local or else my remote provisioner. Okay, so local provisioner use చేసినప్పుడు ఏమైంది, this will store in my system basically over here where I have installed my Terraform. This will execute the commands on my local machine. Okay, so instead of using, I mean, if you want to use remote provisioners, again we need to have the connections as well. This is very hectic. ఇది అంత అవసరం కూడా లేదు రిమోట్ ప్రొవిజనర్స్. ఎందుకంటే ఇఫ్ సపోజ్ ఐ వాంట్ టు రన్ ఎనీ కమాండ్స్, రైట్, then I can use user data. Okay, user data, then we have our here doc syntax, right? So I can use that syntax to add my commands. Okay, and then it will be easy. Okay, this is one way to use our user data. Basically what this is doing, this is also trying to install or run any commands on our remote machines. In this case, no need to do any extra configurations. Just add a parameter called or attribute called user data and start executing the commands. Okay, this is pretty simple in terms of using remote provisioners. Okay, so now if you want to use remote provisioners, then we can configure the remote provisioners. Okay, so let me check that example. Okay, let me do one thing. Okay, so after this session, let me share the remote provisioner script as well. As of now, I don't have that script. Okay, let me get one script and let me share that script. Okay, so for now, what we'll do, we'll try to use the local provisioner. Okay, so this is our script. Let me destroy the existing one. Subhiram Reddy, నువ్వు నిన్న చేసినావా కనెక్షన్స్ అండ్ ఆల్?
కనెక్షన్స్ పబ్లిక్ అవ్వాలి.
EC2 క్రియేట్ చేస్తున్నప్పుడు నువ్వు చూపించిన చూడు, దట్ ఈస్ రిమోట్ ప్రొవిజనర్. నువ్వు ఏదైతే చేసావో ఆ స్క్రిప్ట్, దట్ స్క్రిప్ట్ ఈజ్ నథింగ్ బట్ ద రిమోట్ ప్రొవిజనర్. అందుకోసం నీకు చెప్పిన ఇది ఎందుకు యూజ్ చేస్తున్నాను అని.
అంటే ఇంకా ఇన్స్టాల్ చేద్దామని చేశాను, కానీ పబ్లిక్ కి అది పాత్ వేర్ డాట్ ఫైల్స్ క్రియేట్ చేయలేదు.
అవన్నీ క్రియేట్ చేయాలి, చాలా లెంతీ అయిపోతుంది అది.
ఓకే,
okay, so this has been deleted. So let me use this. So basically same instance. Okay, test server, this is my AMID, this is my instance type, this is my key name, these are my tags. Okay, here inside the resource block I will be adding the provisioner. Okay, so this is my local provisioner. This is just name. Okay, local -exec, only for my understanding. Okay, and then I am trying to add a command echo instance, and this is where I need to get the public IP. So basically what I am trying to do, I am trying to save my public IP. Okay, AWS underscore instance dot test -server from here, AWS underscore instance, this is my provider type ID. Okay, and the logical name dot public IP means this will convert this into a string. Okay, and this will fetch the public IP, and then I'm trying to write a message called created, and this will be stored in the file called instance state underscore, I mean instance underscore state dot txt. Okay, So apart from that, there is no other change except this block. We are trying to add the provisioner block within our resource configuration, and this is where our resource configuration is going to end. Okay, so now if I'll execute this, okay, if I'll execute Terraform apply auto approve, this will create one instance on my AWS. Okay, apart from this, this one instance underscore state.txt command should, I mean, this command should also get executed on my local machine. Okay, we can find one file called instance underscore state.txt. Okay, instance has been created. If you see this here, we can see one command has been executed. If I'll open instance underscore state.txt, here we can find instance. This is my public IP and the message. This is how we can use the local providers. Similar to this, we have, as I said, we have what we call, I mean, remote providers. Okay, clear? This is only for executing any commands on our local machine or on our remote machine. So similar to this, again in providers, we have different provisioners. I mean, in provisioners, again, we have different types over here. I mean, the behavior of the provisioners. So if you see this, this has been created when we are trying to create our resource, right? For example, if you want to store the data when we are trying to delete this, or else, for example, the command, whatever command we have passed, there is some kind of error. For example, let me add one add one extra path slash tmp. In Windows, we will not be finding slash tmp, right? So this path is not correct. So there is one mistake or error in our command, whatever I am trying to pass. So what will happen? So let me delete my state file. Okay, let me delete this. Okay, for example, if there is any kind of error in my command, what will happen? Let me try to execute this again. Terraform apply. Want to add 0 to change, 0 to destroy. It is trying to create, okay, my EC2 instance with the same AMI ID and with the same tag. అరే యార్ షిట్ మ్యాన్, ఇది సేవే చేయలేదు. Let me save this. Okay, let me delete these files again. Okay, this is saved, right? Yes. Now let me try to execute. Basically, this should throw some error. Okay, So here if you'll see, it is throwing some error that local exec, the path what we have created and what we have passed is not correct. I mean, this is not existing path. Okay, so if I'll open my state file, notice one status. Okay, there is one status called 1010. Just remember about this. I will talk about this after some time. Okay, so apart from that, if you see my AWS account, here one new instance has been initialization. Okay, basically instance has been created, but the command whatever has been failed, this has been executed. I mean, this has been ignored. Okay, so commands even tappunte, what it will do, it will create the resource. Okay, but the provisioner section will be ignored. Apart from that, in state file we can see the status at tainted. Okay, so tainted, why do we use taint and untaint? I will explain you. Okay, so as of now, just remember that if we are using any provisioners, if there is some issue with the commands whatever we are trying to pass, then it will ignore that provisioner and it will just create the resource for us. Okay, now let me get back to my previous one. Okay, this is the correct path. For example, as I said, whenever we are trying to create one EC2 instance, this is getting created. If suppose you want to create, I mean, this command should get executed at the time of destroying. Means whenever I am trying to change something or trying to delete this one, this should get executed. In that case, we have provisioners. We can use this condition in our provisioner when equal to destroy. So creating at the time of creating resource is the default one. That's what we are using. Okay, when equal to destroy, this we can use if I want to create or execute any command at the time of destroying. Okay, I can use this condition. Now if I use terraform destroy, okay, destroy provisioners and the condition configurations count refers to the destroy phase can cause different circuits. What happened? Command is also correct. Command equal to echo destroy from time provisions under connection configuration only review. Yes, well.
అది డిపెండెన్సీ సైకిల్స్ మీద అవ్వదని చెప్పాను. రిఫరెన్సెస్ లో డ్యూరింగ్ డిస్ట్రాయ్ డిపెండెన్సీ సైకిల్స్ మీద ఇంటరాక్ట్ అవ్వదు అని చెప్పి.
Under connection configuration only reference attributes of the related resource via self counted of each. Okay, let us check. Locally when equal to destroy. So this is the condition. Syntax is also okay. Basically here what I can see is the taint state. Let me try to remove this state to untaint. Untaint. First ఆ స్టేటస్ కి చేంజ్ చేస్తాను నేను. ఓకే, instance dot Let me do one thing. Okay, let me delete the state file. Let me use my local resource. Content will be allocats. Okay, and then we will be using our provisioners. Local exec and then command ext. Okay, and this will be redirected to file.txt. Okay, I'm using the command echo. So let me use echo. Okay, now let me use Terraform init. Let me use apply because simple file execute this or else state file is getting corrupted. Okay, page.txt and we have the file.txt where it is mentioning as created the file page.txt. Okay, for example, if I am trying to destroy this, okay, then destroy. Okay, now let me save this. Message changes so that it will be easy for us to understand. Okay, and Terraform destroy. See, this is working now. Okay, if an open file deleted the file page.txt. So basically, if the local provisioner you want to execute any commands when it is trying to create, then but default the behavior is the same. I mean, we don't need to pass any conditions. For example, if you want to provide any commands, okay, I mean, it should get created only when it is destroyed. In that case, we can use the condition when equal to destroy. Okay, so see the state file, you can choose the state file. Okay, destroyed, right? So no state file. If I'm removing this, what will happen? This will get executed at runtime. Created, okay, Terraform applied. Okay, created the file page.txt. If I'll open the state file, this is our current state of the infrastructure. Okay, so similar to this, we have two more on failure. Okay, on fail. So basically, on failure repo, for example, if the script got failed, just now what we have seen is, for example, if I have passed some other wrong path, right? So in that case, what will happen? The script will get executed except the command. In that cases, we can specify this on failure equal to fail. Okay, and on fail equal to continue, basically to create the resource and ignore the changes. So these are the four conditions or behaviors of Terraform provisioners. This is same for local and for remote provisioners. Okay, understood?
Yes or no?
ఏమైపోతుంది అంటే మేము కంటిన్యూ ఏదో ఒకటి ఎగ్జిక్యూట్ చేస్తున్నాం కాబట్టి ద స్టేట్ వల్ ఈస్ బిన్ గెటింగ్ కరప్టెడ్, అందుకోసమే కొన్ని ఎగ్జిక్యూట్ అవుతలేదు. దట్ ద రీజన్ ఐఎమ్ డిలీటింగ్ అగైన్, ఐఎమ్ ట్రైంగ్ టు క్రియేట్ ఏ న్యూ రిసోర్సెస్. ఓకే, సో నెక్స్ట్ we have taint and untaint. Okay, basically taint and untaint. For example, in this case, for some reason, we are trying to create one resource and this has been filled for any reason. Reason, this got filled. In this case, for example, /tmp/file. So basically, this will get filled because of the wrong path what we have been creating, right? So if I'm trying to execute Terraform, apply again, what will happen? Resource will get created. Okay, no changes, right? So first let me destroy and let me create a new file again. Okay, Terraform apply. Yes, local exec has been provided errors because of this path which is not available in my local machine. Okay, so if I'll open the state file, here we can see something called status as tainted. Okay, so Terraform by default, if something went wrong at the time of creation of the resources, at that point of time, what Terraform will do? Terraform will mark this status as tainted. Means, what does it mean? This is, yeah. చెప్పండి, ఎవరు అన్మ్యూట్ చేశారు మళ్ళీ సైలెంట్ అయిపోయారు? Terraform will just mark this resource as tainted so that this can be replaced when I am trying to execute Terraform apply again. For example, if you see this, now this is the correct path, right? So if I'm trying to execute Terraform apply, generally since we have the page.txt, this should not get executed. Okay, right? Since we have the page.txt already created, this should not get executed because infrastructure is same. But since it has marked as tainted, if I'll execute Terraform apply, what this will do? This will create a new file again. See, destroying and creating, because Terraform has marked the status as tainted. Okay, so that this will be replaced whenever we are trying to execute Terraform apply. Okay, got it? For example, let me explain you again. Okay, so just now I have created my page.txt. This is already available. Okay, even in the state file we can see the complete infrastructure details, right? So if I'm trying to execute Terraform apply, what will happen? No changes. This, we need to see this message, no changes are required. Okay, this should happen. This is the actual behavior of Terraform. Okay, but for some reasons, if it has, for example, let me execute again, or else let me mark it as tainted in manual process. Okay, so I will mark it as taint by using some manual commands. Okay, this will be my local underscore file dot test. I have marked my resource as taint. Okay, my resource has been tainted. If I'll open my state file, here it will show the status as tainted. Okay, now if I'll execute Terraform apply, what will happen? It will again try to create the resource. It will replace that because for some reason it has been marked as tainted. That can be a manual process or any issues with the script what we have executed. Okay, so tainted and ఎప్పుడైతే స్టేటస్ వస్తుందో, whenever we execute Terraform applied, then Terraform will make sure to replace that file. Okay, that's the reason we have Terraform taint. Okay, see, local file test is tainted, so must be replaced. Or else ఏం చేయాలి? జనరల్గా Terraform, this should ignore the changes because అసలు ఏం infrastructure is same, there is no changes, right? So it should not allow us to disturb and create. Basically this should throw the error as, I mean, no changes required. That output we need to see. But in this case, since it has been marked as tainted, this is getting replaced by Terraform. Okay, similar to this we have something called untainted. For example, let me mark this as tainted again. Manually itself, I will be using Terraform commands. Okay, taint. Okay, marked as tainted. Right. For some reason, this has been marked as tainted. If suppose if I open this, the status is tainted. So if you want to untaint, because what Terraform apply will do, this will replace our infrastructure, right? So in this case, if you don't want to get replaced, in that case, what I can do, I can use untaint. Okay. Now everything has been removed. If I'll execute Terraform apply, nothing will happen. Basically, untaint means undoing the changes. That's it. Tainting means we are letting Terraform know to replace that particular resource. Okay, that can be either done manually or that will automatically get done whenever Terraform will find any issues with the provisioners or for any reasons. Okay, clear?
అన్న ఈ టెంటెడ్ అనే రిసోర్స్ లో రాస్తే ఒక్క రిసోర్సే
రైట్ రైట్
అవుతుంది.
రైట్. ఇప్పుడు ఫర్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ 2 రిసోర్సెస్ ఉన్నాయి అనుకో నీ దగ్గర, ఈ పర్టికులర్ రిసోర్స్ కి ఇష్యూ వస్తుంది, దెన్ ఏమవుతుంది అంటే ఈ యొక్క రిసోర్సే రీప్లేస్ అవుతుంది బికాస్ ద స్టేటస్ హ్యాస్ బీన్ మార్క్డ్ యాజ్ tainted. ఓకే, క్వశ్చన్ అడిగిన ఆన్సర్ ఇచ్చిన ఎస్ నో ఏదో ఒకటి చెప్పా, అర్థమైందా అర్థం కాలేదా? నువ్వు చెప్తే నేను కంటిన్యూ అవ్వచ్చని నేను వెయిటింగ్.
అర్థమైందండి. అంటే రీసోర్స్ లోపల ఏదైతే రిసోర్స్ కి ఇస్తామో ఆ ఒక్క రిసోర్స్ ఆగిపోతుంది, అంటే
అవును,
మళ్ళీ
రీప్లేస్
క్రియేట్ అవుతుంది.
రైట్.
ఓకే.
ఓకే, and then we have debugging చాలా important. Okay, for example, let me copy this first. Okay, for example, if I'm trying to use Terraform plan, I'm trying to use Terraform plan. Okay, let me use Terraform destroy first. Let me destroy the existing content. Okay, deleted, right? So if I'm trying to use Terraform plan or Terraform apply, ఏదైనా command use చేసి ఏమైతుంది చూద్దాం. Okay, so here we are getting some basic details. These are nothing but logs, what is going to happen. Okay, so if you want to see more logs, if you want to check more detailed information of what's happening, why it has got failed, అవన్నీ మనకు తెలవాలి, ఇన్ డీటెయిల్ లాగ్స్ కావాలనుకున్నప్పుడు we can use Terraform debugging. So basically, so we can have either temporary log files or permanent log files. So first let us check about temporary log files. Okay, so if you want to check the temporary log files, then we can use this. The variable will be tf underscore log and then equal to trace. So we have 5 different type of logging. So this is the information. Okay, if we have any warnings, then this will throw warnings. If we have any errors, then we can use error logs. If you want to debug, then we can use debug. And trace is the highest level of logging. This will get the complete detail of our log files. Okay, so in my use case I will be using trace. This will get the complete details, so I will be using trace. Okay, and what I am trying to do, I'm just setting a temporary variable. Okay, the variable name will be tf underscore log and the value will be trace. Okay, once this is set, if I'm using Terraform plan, see ఇప్పుడు చూడండి ఎన్ని logs create అయినాయి. If you can see this, so these are the in detail log of our resource configuration. ఈ particular file create చేసినప్పుడు what is happening actually in the backend, we can see that with the help of logs. Okay, if you want to get the complete detailed information, then we can use the logging level as trace. For example, instead of trace I want to use only errors. Okay, I want to see only errors, so I will change my variable to error. Okay, if I'll execute Terraform plan, as of now we will not see any errors because we don't have any errors in our configuration. Confused errors? No. Okay, for example, let me add the path again. This is throwing error, right? So let me execute this. Let me change this and try to use Terraform plan again. Okay, now we can see two logs. Okay, okay, now let me try to use apply. Sometimes what will happen is in plan we can't see the exact detailed information. That's what it is displaying over here as well. Okay, so let me execute Terraform apply, and then we can see the error logs as well. See, here we can see the error logs. These are our error logs. What we can see in our template. ఓకే, అర్లియర్ ఏమైతుంటే ఈ పర్టికులర్ లైన్ ప్రింట్ అవ్వకపోతుంటే సిన్స్ ఐ హ్యావ్ యూస్డ్ ద డీటెయిల్ లాగింగ్ వీఆర్ ఏబుల్ టు సీ ద ఎగ్జాక్ట్ ఇష్యూ వాట్స్ హ్యాపెనింగ్. ఓకే, సో these are only temporary. If you want to see only at the runtime, for example, if you want to store this permanently, if you want to store your log files permanently, then in this case we can use same variable, but this will be tf underscore log underscore path variable needs to be used. Okay, so let me copy this, let me use this. Okay, set hyphen item path environmental, this is my log name and this is my value. Basically my log should be stored in the terraform.log. Okay, now let me store the traces or error. Okay, let me use error only, ఎందుకంటే పైన ఉన్న ఫైల్లో we can see some error. Okay, so once this is done, if I am trying to execute terraform apply, see terraform.log, if I click this we can see the error which has been captured. Okay, this is how we can store the permanent logs. Okay, for example, if you want to store the complete traces, okay, so let me remove this. This will be trace. Okay, terraform, and let me make changes to my configuration file as well. I don't want any errors. Okay, apply, yes, and then this has been done. But if I'll open the log file, you can చూడండి ఎన్ని logs generate అయినాయో. These logs we will not be seeing on our console. On console we can see only some basic logs. If you want the detailed logs, then we can use these variables tf underscore log for temporary, tf underscore log underscore path is to store the logs permanently. Okay, hope this is clear. Yes or no?
Yes or no?
Okay, okay. And for today we have one more topic, that is Terraform import. For example, if you want to disable the logs, then you can use the unset command, unset and then path. Okay, try to check this. Okay, Terraform import. So for example, Ankundam, let me terminate these two instances manually. Okay, let me remove these configurations as well. I don't want these configurations now. Okay, let me delete this pets file, everything. Let me delete this. Okay, now we will be using Terraform import. So apart from Terraform, we have a number of tools available in the market to create our instances. Either we can create with the help of Ansible, with the help of bash scripting, either with the help of AWS CLI commands, or with the help of manual interactions. Means manually I can create my instance. Okay, so apart from Terraform, we have a number of tools which will help us to create or provision our infrastructure. That can be EC2, VPC, or anything. Okay, so For example, in our case, if there is some existing infrastructure, for example, okay, let me use this AWS underscore instance. The name is test. Okay, AMI ID. Let me copy that AMI ID. Let me use Ubuntu. Okay, let me copy the Ubuntu AMI ID. Okay, and then instance type I want to use e2.micro. Okay, and key pairs and all not required as of now. Okay, so this template, what this will do, this will help us to create one EC2 instance. Terraform init iphone template. Okay, what this template will do, this will help me to create one instance with this specific AMI ID. Okay, if I go to my EC2 dashboard, I've created one instance with the help of my Terraform. Okay, initialization is completed. Now let me use Terraform apply. Yes. This is trying to create one image or EC2 with Ubuntu image. Okay, so this is our pending one. Okay, this is our newly provisioned EC2. Okay, if we check the AMI ID, then we can see that. See, AMI ID is same, 9CF and 9CF. Okay, so with the help of Terraform, I have created only one instance, but in my case, I can see multiple instances. One more instance is already available in my infrastructure. This is already created. So if I want to use these details, then I can use data resources in Terraform, right? If I want to check the IP address or anything of existing infrastructure, then what I can use data resources. But if I want to manage the existing infrastructure, in that case, we can't do anything. Okay, so if you want to manage, for example, if you want to delete this test iphone server with the help of Terraform, can we do that? Is that possible for us? Yes or no? Is it possible to delete the existing server which has been provisioned manually without Terraform? Yes or no?
I think no.
Sorry?
No.
No, right? So if suppose you want to do that, I mean, you want to maintain, delete, create, destroy, manage the existing infrastructure as well. In that case, we have Terraform import command, which will help us to import the existing infrastructure in Terraform state file. Basically, what we'll do, we'll copy the existing infrastructure to our state file. ఎందుకంటే state file is the actual source, I mean actual truth, source of truth that will have the complete information of our infrastructure, right? So we can use Terraform import command, which will help us to get the details of our existing infrastructure, which was created either manually or with any other tools. Okay, so we can use this command. Okay, for example, let me copy this. Let me execute import. Okay, the AWS underscore instance will be our provider name. Okay, dot this name I want to configure to my server. Okay, for example, manual I will give. Okay, then space and then instance ID. Instance ID, the reason behind instance ID is for the uniqueness. This is the unique number which is available. Okay, let me copy this and let me paste in my CLI. Okay, if I hit enter, see what will happen. Resource address AWS instance.manual does not existing in the configuration. Means if you want to import anything, then it should be written in the configuration file as well. Means, for example, this way. ఇలా బ్లాక్ అనేది రాయాలి. We need to write down the details. For example, I want to name it as manual, right? Manual. Okay, and then the AMI ID. What is the AMI ID? Let me copy this AMI ID. Test server, right? So I want to bring out the test server. What is the AMI ID? AMI ID according to test server. Okay, this is my AMI ID. I need to write this configuration block as well. Then only we can import the existing infrastructure. You can import anything, either VPC, load balancer, anything, but that needs to be written in the configuration file as well. The instance type is T2 micro only. Tags are not required. Okay, now if I use the import command, let us see what will happen. Okay, sorry, I have copied the wrong ID. This is the actual ID. I'll hit enter. Since the configuration is already written, see import has been successfully prepared. Okay, if I'll open state file, then here we can see two configurations. One is related to our newly provisioned instance. For example, where is our, okay, manage AWS instance. AMI ID 9CF, right? This AMI ID is 34B. Okay, if I'll show you this, where is our AMI ID? 34B. Okay, so this is our instance AMI ID which has been managed by AWS. See, if you see the name as manual, I mean this is the logical name what I have given. Okay, so this is how we can import the existing infrastructure to Terraform. But before using import command, we need to write the configuration block as well. Without configuration block, Terraform will not be able to import the existing infrastructure. And do not expect that Terraform will automatically write that block for us. Okay, we need to write that block. Okay, so for example, now we have got the configurations, right? Now if I am executing Terraform destroy, what will happen? This will be destroying both our instances which were managed by Terraform. Now see, manual and test. This is how we can import the existing infrastructure in our Terraform state files. Okay, if I refresh this, this will be terminating state. See, shutting down, shutting down. Okay, now hope this was clear for today.
నా ఇన్స్టెన్సెస్ మెనీ క్రియేట్ చేయాలంటే కౌంటర్ ఇస్తామా అన్న?
కౌంట్ ఇచ్చి ఫర్ ఈచ్ అవి ఉన్నాయా ఇన్స్టెన్స్ ట్యాగ్స్ అవి ఇసుకో. ట్రై చేయి.
ఓకే
ఓకే గైస్, యూ హ్యావ్ గాట్ ఆల్ ద బేసిక్స్. ఇప్పుడు మీరు ఎన్ని ఇన్స్టెన్సెస్ కావాలి, ఏం చేయాలనుకున్నది అది మీ ఇష్టం.
ఓకే
ఓకే, లోకల్ ఫైల్ యూస్ కేస్ ఏదైతే యూస్ చేసామో we have used that in all the possible ways whatever I can show. Okay, still we are left with one more session in Terraform. Okay, ఇంకొక క్లాస్ ఉంటుంది Terraform పైన. So let me stop this recording. If you have any questions, then let me know.